The O'Keefe Media Group once again exposes Disney with another drop of hidden camera interviews that will shock you to the core when you hear what the House of Mouse has to say.
Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the
Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Airy. Welcome to the StudioJake vidcast where I talk about all things pop culture. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, ring that little bell and consider becoming a channel member. All right. Well, the O'Keefe Media Group is at it again. You may have recalled that I reported on an incident where the O'Keefe Media Group does what it does best. They send people out to pretend to be dates for people in power and then record them. And I fully support what they do. I know some people are kind of iffy about that, but these are people in power. They aren't just regular folks. If it was them, I would have a problem with it. But these are wealthy individuals who have a lot of sway. And while I would prefer them to mainly go after the government, it is fine with me that they are also going after, billion-dollar companies like Disney, which is tied directly to the government, especially considering Bob Iger donates millions to the DNC. That aside, previously they did an interview, or they did secret interviews, I should clarify, with a gentleman. They had two different operatives get this guy to admit on camera to certain things about Disney's diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. In other words, woke policies. Well, now they did it again with a second guy, and this guy had a lot more vitriolic things to say. Now, this is according to Inside the Magic. After releasing an explosive video last week in which Senior Vice President at 20th Century Television, Michael Giordano, said the Walt Disney Company does not hire white men, James O'Keefe has recorded a second undercover video with a Disney executive that claims the company does not hire executives who are not white or Jewish. The latest video shows Walt Disney's Director of Production Finance, Soharb Dave Mocker, on what appears to be a date being taped, saying that the Walt Disney Company would not hire anyone as a C-suite executive who is not white or Jewish. Mocker said, "There's a slight glass ceiling at Disney. I feel like there's a glass ceiling. It's not quite like in Reach yet. You're not going to get a CFO, I guess, for lack of a better word, a non-white, non-Jewish. So I feel, and that being said, the two department heads are two Jewish men. It's not that I have anything against Jewish men. I'm just saying that people of color, felt that, and she quit because she said I can't seem to like him." Mocker referring to a colleague of his who was a Hispanic woman who left the company because she felt there was no room for advancement with Disney because she was not man enough. Much like the video released last week showing Michael Giordano discussing Disney's hiring and diversity initiatives, this video appears to have been shot without Mocker's knowledge. Giordano was lured to the meeting via a dating website and believed he was dating a woman who asked him questions about his job at the Walt Disney Company. Mocker told the woman that as part of his job with Walt Disney Television, he tracks diversity within the company, and he has seen an increase in diverse hiring recently. He also admitted that Disney has inserted diversity when it's not really organic to the story, and that some of Disney's recent movies that have flopped because the audience couldn't connect with the forced diversity. With the release of the second video, James O'Keefe and his oh this incorrectly says Project Veritas. James O'Keefe is no longer associated with Project Veritas. He now is associated with O'Keefe Media Group, but continuing on. James O'Keefe and his organization have made it clear that they are coming for Disney. O'Keefe have promised more of these videos with Disney executives discussing the company's diversity initiatives and hiring practices. Disney has not responded to either video. However, Disney did block the O'Keefe Media Group on Instagram. Wow, that was petty. Mocker continued by saying that he believed Disney CEO Bob Iger is corrupt and just wants to stay in power. Ooh, this guy's going to lose his job. He called Elon Musk a narcissist, but he agreed with Musk that Bob Iger should resign. Since the first video discussing Disney's hiring practices, Michael Giordano has taken a leave of absence from his job with Disney. There has been no update on Mocker's status with the company. Okay, well, yeah. Again, these guys are all saying what we know. And what's interesting, that something they leave out of this article, is Mocker specifically names a show that was released as a Hulu exclusive called Death and Other Details. I believe on the video they mislabel it as Debt and Other Details, but they were actually referring to Death and Other Details, which is about I believe, a crime that takes place on a cruise ship and two people who are trying to solve it. And he was saying how there was just a lot of diversity in there that didn't make sense. He was admitting this. Now, again, say what you want to about James O'Keefe's practices, him and his O'Keefe Media Group. I said what I thought at the beginning. I'm not going to repeat it. But I think it's important to expose companies like this because Disney has been corrupt for a long time. Now, he goes on to talk more and expand on the corruption of Bob Iger. And I watched that segment. I watched the clips from it. I just wanted to read an article that summed it up for you. But one thing I wanted to expand on is something that I've always said. Bob Iger has been there too long. And even this guy, Mocker, admitted it. So basically, what he said was after, I'm putting a parenthesis here, after Chapek's departure, Bob Iger came back and he was only supposed to stay for 2 years to help them get settled and he would help them find a new CEO. Unfortunately, Bob Chapek fired the guy when Chapek was CEO. He fired the guy that would have been Bob Iger's successor, and that kind of messed up Iger's plans. However, when, in his not so triumphant return, where Iger is ushering in all of these flops, Inside Out 2 being an exception to the flops, they're saying that, or Mocker was saying that he was only supposed to come in for 2 years, but he got extended through 2026. And he's saying he's just trying to stay in power. And that's something that I have always said. Whatever Kathleen Kennedy had on Chapek or Iger, how does she stay in power? She's overseen flop after flop. The Disney sequels to Star Wars were successful initially, but then you saw the decline at the box office ever since. Solo lost money, for example. Their TV shows, with the exception of Mandalorian season 1 and 2, Star Wars Visions, and the final season of Clone Wars, have all flopped. And you say, well, Jacob, that's a list of 4. Well, yeah, but think about it. Andor is actually a really good show. Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni had nothing to do with it. And so it ended up being a really good show produced by Tony Gilroy, who he was the one who was credited with fixing Rogue One, which I didn't think Rogue One should have been fixed. I would love to see how Gareth Edwards actually shot that, but Tony Gilroy recut it. And you can tell it was heavily recut because of the trailer versus the movie. It's almost a totally different movie. That being said, Tony Gilroy was giving an Andor spinoff, and nothing wrong with Andor. I like his character. I like the actor who plays Andor, but he is such a minor character in the grand scheme of Star Wars. I don't think he could carry a show. Now, had Disney been doing a good job, I think Andor would be a hit. It is a good movie. I don't care what people say about it. Or excuse me, a good miniseries. It's not a movie, it's a miniseries. That's my bad. But with the way Iger, Kennedy, Feige have been mismanaging their respective departments, you would think that they would be let go, but they can't be let go because of their policies that they are pushing. And it is clear from these Disney tapes, at least in my opinion, that that is what this is about. It's about holding on to power. It's not about who is best for the job. In any other industry, apart from politics, all of them would have been fired by now. The investors, the board would have had enough and they would have said, okay, it's time for you to go. Because even though Inside Out is a hit and Iger can put that as a badge, it being a Pixar release, because Pixar had some stinkers with Turning Red, etc. He can put that, as a badge and say, oh, see, look, Inside Out 2 did good. And he's going to say the same thing about Deadpool and Wolverine. But I think 2 hits aren't gonna be enough to save Disney. I just don't think so. I think that it's going to be a disaster, a slow rolling disaster that's gonna end up hurting the House of Mouse. And quite frankly, it's of their own design, and they should be ashamed with how they handled the legacy of the great Walt Disney. Walt Disney is such an interesting figure because he was maligned, he was lied about, he stood up to communists, which is why he was lied about. People make all kinds of accusations. I know Family Guy loves to rib him by claiming he was an anti Semite. He was not an anti Semite. That rumor got started because of a newspaper that was funded by the Communist Party. If you don't believe me, look it up. What happened was it was a union newspaper, which, by the way, unions are usually fronts for communist or the mafia. He was maligned in that paper, and then another newspaper quoted that newspaper, and then because they knew, when they found out that union paper was funded by the communists, they started quoting the second paper that said that about him, and then that rumor spread like wildfire. It's a fascinating story about the power of gossip and how it can destroy one man's reputation. And it just was not true. It was all lies. And now a company built by such a great man who was maligned for his rugged Americanism, for his rugged individualism, has just fallen into the hands of these pretenders who just want to push an agenda. They don't actually care about telling good stories. And as a creator, I find that especially offensive. If you like that video, be sure to give it a like, share it out to all your friends, leave me a comment on what you think, and subscribe. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, ring that little bell so you get notifications when a new video is posted, and consider becoming a channel member where you get all kinds of perks, including a Members First Look exclusive that comes out once a week where members can see the video before it goes live. But if you're watching elsewhere and you're like, I don't want to support you with big tech, hey, you might even been saying that here on YouTube. No worries. Click on the link to my YouTube community. It's in the description. You can send me tips or you can sign up for a monthly membership. It's way less than a cup of coffee, and I would greatly appreciate it because you can support indie creators like myself. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.
Cause I've been living life right like I could just die